Let's bring in our Margaret Brennan, who's outside Trump Tower right here in New York City. So, Margaret, as we mentioned, 3 prominent CEOs have now resigned from the President's Manufacturing Council as a result of his response to the situation in Charlottesville. Is there a sense that others will follow?
Well, we know that labor leader Richard Trumka of the AFL-CIO told CBS News that he's assessing his role on the panel, but he really kind of questioned whether it was worth his time or not, because he said that panel hasn't held what he called a single real meeting. So his withdrawal, he's not exactly pinning to outcry here. We know Kevin Plank of Under Armour also hedged a little bit there, but we did have very direct language both from the CEO of Intel and very much so from the CEO of Merck, who made it abundantly clear that they were personally objecting to the president and his delayed rejection and denouncement of these hate groups. And clearly, for anyone doing business who has to keep an eye towards what consumers are thinking, they will be very attuned to how the public is going to be potentially linking their business with the president's platform.
Meanwhile, Margaret, we know the president is now considering using his very first presidential pardon to pardon former Arizona Sheriff Joe Arpaio. People may remember that name. Really controversial guy. He was convicted of ignoring a court order to stop traffic patrols that target immigrants, essentially stopping people because they look like maybe they might be undocumented immigrants, and really not stopping them because there's any proof at all. What can you tell us about this report that he's considering pardoning him?
Well, President Trump said he is seriously considering issuing this pardon, which would be the very first of his presidency. He first floated the idea in an interview with Fox News and again tweeted it today. Joe Arpaio is his 85-year-old former Arizona sheriff who has long been accused of racially profiling Latinos. And he was convicted of defying a court order to stop these traffic patrols that stopped individuals simply because they were suspected of being illegal immigrants, which is why groups like the ACLU have said this is targeting Latinos, this is targeting people on the basis of race, not because they've actually done anything illegal. And so that is why it was already in the courts and controversial. But Arpaio was a vocal supporter of President Trump. He has been very aggressive in his immigration enforcement, and that would very much resonate with the part of President Trump's base who voted for him on that single issue of being tough on the border and tough on immigration, because Arpaio has become in many ways an icon for the far right who want this very aggressive enforcement. Of course, civil rights groups say it is enforcement that is essentially illegal here and violating the rights of individuals. This is something that we'll have to see. He's supposed to be sentenced in October, so this is a decision the president would have to make quickly. And he told Fox News this weekend he's considering issuing a pardon within days. He may be floating this, but it is something that is out there, and clearly in this environment, when the president's trying to quiet one racially fueled controversy, he's basically weighing whether to plunge right back into another one.
Yeah, and Margaret, I got to ask you, it's been a couple of weeks now since General John Kelly took over as chief of staff. He was expected to streamline the communications, the operations, but there were also some people that said, look, at the end of the day, the president is the one who makes these decisions, and if you can't rein in the commander-in-chief, then it's going to be business as usual. What do you make of just the last couple of weeks since Kelly's been in that position?
Well, as a former Marine general, he was expected to focus very much on command and control, and he seems to be doing that when it comes to the president's staff. However, when it comes to the communication from the president himself, we haven't seen that he really has that degree of very strong influence. Clearly, he was consulted on this last iteration of the president's statement, where he finally did directly condemn the KKK, neo-Nazis, and the other hate groups behind this march. Chief of Staff Kelly was said to have emphasized to the president the need to be direct here in his communication, something the president had been reluctant to do because it would have acknowledged an error in the first place in not having done so on Saturday in his initial remarks. And we see just this morning from the tweets that the president is putting out that the president's chief of staff has not taken away that device. You see the president out there directly tweeting some things that are, again, fairly controversial, retweeting some items as well, and suggesting and pointing some political political Molotov cocktails, you might say, towards his base that would, in some ways, quiet the criticism that he says is coming unfairly from the media, not directly addressing the criticism that's been leveled at him from some of his very own Republican allies. So Chief of Staff Kelly hasn't been able to change the nature of the man, but frankly, whoever expected him to do so, President Trump, prides himself on speaking directly to his base. And Chief of Staff Kelly, it doesn't appear, is going to be able to change the way he connects with them.
And speaking directly to his base is what's helped him maintain his support within that base, even though there may be support eroding elsewhere. Right. He's still keeping that 36% or so behind him. Margaret Brennan, just outside Trump Tower. Thank you so much, Margaret.